Warning. This episode may contain adult content.
Welcome back to Listen Sandro's Marketing Podcast. We are the podcast that helps your small business grow through all things digital marketing, including SEO, paid search, paid social, and so many other ways. Today, we're taking a different tact. Warning, this episode may contain some adult content, may give some of you PTSD if you've lived the agency life. But today we're taking a different tack. We're talking agency horror stories. And for that, we're joined by our guest, Jeff Booher. Liz is going to introduce him.
That's right. We have Jeff back. He has held leadership roles in the marketing industry for over 15 years, so he comes with quite a bit of experience. He is currently employed as a marketing and business consultant and project manager, and he has listened to every episode of our podcast, and we thank him for that. We think he's responsible for most of our downloads. But let's jump into the topic, agency horror stories.
Sure, and before we do that, I just want to thank you both for having me. I do download your podcast on all of my devices.
Multiple times, yeah.
And encourage my family and friends to do so. I actually I will hijack their devices and subscribe.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that.
We're talking about one specific agency horror story you have, correct?
Yeah, it will go unnamed, but this can...
Liz is also familiar with this agency in some way. Sorry. Yeah.
So, but this can and probably does apply to, countless other agencies that are out there.
I agree. I have also crossed paths with the agency Jeff will be talking about, but I know it's not uncommon.
And one of the reasons for doing this is our recent episode was about what college students can do to better themselves in the marketing world, better prepare themselves in case college didn't really prepare you, or let's say you want to brush up on some things. We talked about that recently, and in this episode, Liz gave some great examples that she went out into the real world after college and wishes she would have learned some of these things.
That's right. And I didn't start my career off at a marketing agency. However, again, I was just so excited to have a job and be working and earning a paycheck. And there were a lot of red flags that I probably should have caught in the interview process. And in that first week of employment, I should have been looking for another job immediately and got the heck out of there. But hey, here I am. Everything happens for a reason. I landed on my feet and I'm okay. But if we can share some insight with college graduates and help them make good career choices, then that would be great.
Yeah, college, they do a really good job of preparing you for the tools you'll be using and the subject content. And I think, to be fair to college, they can't really prepare you for everything. There's so much of what happens outside of the classroom that they just cannot prepare you for, and that's called life, and you have to live it. So I just want, people out there who may, be recently graduated or in college or people who want to commiserate with us, just sharing the story. It's what college really can't prepare you for. And so you don't have to learn as I did by going through it and, finding yourself in a situation that's not great.
So let's start with the interview and the interview process and some red flags that as an interviewee, you should be looking for.
So hindsight's 2020. We've all made mistakes that we did not know at the time were mistakes. Perhaps you are in a relationship right now, and that person may not be the one for you. We've all been there. And that does happen also with jobs. So I kind of want to save face here in the beginning that in hindsight, yes, it totally made sense that these were red flags, but at the time I was completely unaware that they were.
Sure. Okay,
so I apply via LinkedIn, a very, very reputable place to apply to a job. It was an ad. It was for a position that was within my skill set. I was working in banking at the time, and there were a lot of transferable skills to an agency. I had marketing experience before I moved to banking, so I'm like, why don't we just do this? This is great. I want to give you an idea of my desperation at the time. I had been laid off by my employer and had been said, okay, you have like 3 months on the job, and then we're eliminating your position. The bank.
At the bank, yeah.
So I had to find a job quick. So my wife was also pregnant. It was a planned pregnancy. So not knowing that my banking job would be eliminated. So I had to act fast. So I was kind of in a position that so this is kind of where I'm going to stop and say, you really don't want to be looking for a job in that situation. You don't want to be in that desperate situation where, hey, I need a job, I need a paycheck, the bills are going to still come, I'm feeling stressed out, trying to keep all of the stress inside to support my pregnant wife. So that's kind of the first red flag. Do not be desperate. Apply when you have maybe some cash saved up.
Have an emergency fund. I mean, this is not a financial podcast, but we'll toss that out there for consideration.
I for sure, even though I worked in banking, I'm not qualified to give any financial advice, but save your money, I think, is a pretty good place to start.
Just good rule of thumb, yeah.
That said, so I really needed to get another position, applied. The person who responded to my my resume, so that's always good because most of the time you get no response, and said, call me if you want to chat about the job. Now, again, go ahead.
As opposed to some kind of official, hey, we'd love to get you scheduled for a first interview.
Yes. Call me if you're interested in the position. I thought so I emailed, I said, I am interested in the position. Let's meet, or let's have a phone conversation at a certain time. We agree on a certain time. I book a conference room, my banking job. I'm trying to, be very professional about this. I don't want to talk about this on the floor. So, I take that time out of my day, block it off, and I call, no answer.
Oh boy.
And okay, fine. People get busy, whatever.
Maybe something came up.
Whatever.
It happens.
That's right. So it's fine. I wait, 10, 15 minutes, call back, no answer. Okay?
But there's voicemail, right? You leave a voicemail?
No, it was probably full.
I left a very professional voicemail. The second time I called, it was full. So I'm like, okay.
You're making that up. That's not true.
I wish I was making it up. So I'm about to leave the conference room. There's another person coming into the conference room. And lo and behold, get a call back. So I do what people in that situation do. I go out to my car. Yeah. So now I have all of my interview materials. I'm in my car.
On your lap.
Yeah. It's
spread out on the steering wheel.
Right. It's Cleveland, Ohio. It's cold. So I didn't have time to get a coat on. I just kind of had to answer the phone call and find the nearest emergency exit. Thank goodness the alarm did not sound. That would have been bad to evacuate the building there. So,
and by the way, maybe you're getting there. Did he acknowledge that or apologize for being late? Is this still a good time to talk? Should we reschedule?
No, this was as if nothing had happened.
So that's incredibly rude. I think, I have scheduled calls with clients, and the first thing I ask, is this still a good time to talk? I want to be mindful of your time.
I wouldn't do it. Let's just put it that way. So, I'm shivering. I'm cold. I'm in my car trying to warm it up and everything. And the call actually goes well. I represent myself pretty well because I had been doing some interview prep. We'll get to the interview prep portion of the advice later. And I schedule an in-person interview. And the great thing about this agency that I thought they were willing to work around my schedule, they scheduled the interview for 6 p.m. after the workday where I could go and not miss any work. So that was great. I'm getting the suit, ironing, we're doing practice interview questions. I'm taking this very seriously. I'm doing some research on the company. Red flag number 2, a company website was terrible. So if, and it was a digital marketing agency. So I'm thinking, man, this, the website's going to be very user-friendly, very, loads fast. It's going to have all of those, hallmarks of, someone who knows what they're doing. It looked like it was from 1995. It was just very old, outdated, loaded. The load speed was very slow. And it was kind of unclear who did what. And it was unclear just kind of their accomplishments, what they specialized in, and so
Very vague.
very vague.
Yeah.
And the LinkedIn page was like 3 sentences, so it was really hard to kind of pin down information about the company. If you cannot research the company, if the company doesn't do a good job of marketing themselves, that is definitely a red flag, because in attracting talent, that would be something that the company would do is, hey, we want qualified candidates here. We're going to be competing.
We have to look the part. We have to show that this is a place where people want to come to work.
Exactly. If you're competing with other agencies, you want to compete for the top talent, you have to have a website that projects you in that ballpark of that other talent. But you know what? Hey, you really make excuses for small businesses. In my head, I'm like, they just need me to come in there and fix their stuff. I can do this. I can
You'll save the day.
They need me, right?
If you're a college student, you just want anybody that wants you. You're happy
True.
somebody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, you send out 100 resumes, and how many calls do you get? So if somebody's calling
you get excited when you get those phone calls.
They have an interest in you. You schedule the in-person interview. You're like ready to go. Like you've been at career services. Your resumes, it's all tight. You have that suit that you bought or your parents bought you. You're like, you want to go out and you want to kind of, take over the world. I wasn't in that position, but I was in a position where I had that kind of eagerness to get that next position. So the website did list the address. So I was able to find the address.
Good.
And in driving to the interview, I noticed that this place looked more like a house than an office building. It just looked like a residence, which, okay, whatever, it's fine. There's a lot of alternative spaces nowadays. And again, see how many excuses I'm making for the company. It's just a domino of excuses. So I get to the parking lot, and it's full, so I don't really know where to park. So I'm kind of waiting, kind of on a side street, and I see somebody pull out, so I kind of take their spot. And in getting out of the car, I noticed the parking lot was very icy. As I had mentioned, it was cold. It was very icy, and I really...
It was like January in Cleveland.
Yeah, it was January. I had to really watch my step out of the parking lot. And by itself, that would have been like, oh, okay, well, weather changes very quickly here. It could have been just... some recent freeze over, but, I had an interview. I was coming into their company. I was visiting. One would have thought that, taking the care to say, hey, we got to put some salt down for our visitor. So I get to the door, and it's locked. And I look
Sounds
inside
right.
of the office, and there's no one. It's like ghost town. The lights are off, and I'm looking around, and it's kind of weird. And there's cars in the parking lot, but no one's there. I knock pretty loudly. I didn't really see anybody that was there. You're interviewing. You don't want to be an aggressive knocker, but I did knock. And after three times knocking, somebody finally came out. Oh, hello! It was almost like I surprised them. And again, another red flag. If that company or that person is not waiting for you, is not ready,
prepared to greet you.
Right. I know it was after hours, but we had agreed upon that time. So it was almost as if this person I wasn't communicated to this person that I was becoming in. So I'm ushered into a conference room, and then the interview questions start. Pretty basic questions, but another red flag. It seemed that this person who was interviewing me had not seen my resume before. This was the first time they were looking at it. And the reason why I say that is because they were reading. So, Jeff, off the resume, looking at the resume, I see you've worked at, and then they name the banking company.
Right.
Why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? I have on my resume my accomplishments. I have what I've done, but really kind of had to restate the resume because I couldn't really build upon what was on there because, my resume, I wanted to kind of, what's not on the resume. Hey, I want to tell you more information about, but it really didn't get to that kind of an in-depth discussion because I was It was kind of an intro to me, restating the stuff that was on the resume.
Which is a waste of everyone's time.
Right. One other thing, there are actually two other red flags. One of a question I was asked and one a question that I asked. They asked, so we're doing some rapid fire, and I kind of like these questions because it really kind of helps you get to know the person. They'll be like, Coke or Pepsi, or Apple or Windows, and that's fine. Like it gets you the more conversational. But the one question that I took issue with, they asked me CNN or Fox News. And I said both. I said I'm a regular consumer of media.
of the news. Yeah.
Well, I saw what they were trying to do.
Yes.
You know?
Oh my God.
That I was like, why don't you just come out and say it, right? Why do you got to beat around the bush? The other thing is I asked my interviewer about, some work-life balance, but I didn't put it in like that cheesy term. I said, hey, what do you like to do outside of work?
Yeah.
And kind of what kind of office events do you offer kind of for people to get to know each other? Because in my experience, if people have kind of hobbies that they're into and the office does kind of invest in some work outings, they're very friendly to people who have things going on outside of work. And my interviewer said, "This is my life."
Ooh.
Again, I should have gotten up and left. I should have ran. I should have ran, slipped on the ice, and sued them. I did not do that. I was like, this, again, I can't, in recounting this, I can't believe how many times I made excuses.
You made excuses for them.
I said, this guy's pretty ambitious.
Juggling a lot.
He's, higher up person in the company. Good for him. Good for him that he's investing so much of his... It sounds so stupid to say this now, but good for him that he's investing so much of his time in life, and this company must be inspiring him to...
Must be going places.
Yeah. So that took an hour, and I didn't really... There wasn't really a cap on how long the interview would be. Another red flag.
Yeah.
You really want to be respectful of someone's time, and within, what do they say, the first 30 seconds, if a candidate's going to work out or not. I don't know if it's 30 seconds, but it's very short within the first question or two. So an hour is more than enough time for a company to evaluate if you're a good fit, for you to evaluate if the company is a good fit. So after an hour, I thought I'd be on my way. So that was not the case. The interviewer said, hey, well, I want you to interview with one more person. I want you to interview with the CEO. I said, wow, okay. So it's 7 p.m. Okay, fine. That's whatever. So I go back. I'm ushered into the CEO's office. And the first thing that struck me was there was a lot of CCTV monitors. It just looked like a security guard station. I don't know why I just tried. It just I'd never seen that before in a CEO's office, that there'd be so many camera monitors there. And so I look at it and I said, oh, you're pulling the security detail. You want to make small talk in an interview, and I kind of want to know more about it. And the CEO, without averting his gaze from the monitor, said, I'd just like to know what's going on.
Wow.
And he laughed. He laughed. Right?
He did not laugh. Oh. I laughed. He did not laugh. And what struck me about that was most of the cameras were inside the building. They were not there was 2 cameras in the parking lot, and all the other cameras were inside the building. So it wasn't. It looked like a gas station.
Right.
One of those things where you see the recording.
The person walks out of frame in one monitor and into the other. Yeah.
Which makes sense if you have valuable inventory. Makes sense if, there's a shoplifting concern. I think you should have cameras. But this is a office. This is a digital marketing agency. There's little to no inventory. And it kind of
weirded me out. Some computers, office supplies.
Yeah.
That's
and,
about it.
The good faith to your employees that, hey, we don't need to put a camera on you. We're just going to
trust that you are doing your work.
I mean, not even trust, just like not put that pressure on you. What if you like looked up and saw a camera like staring at you, like, which is what I did actually. Don't want to give that away. The audience doesn't know if I got the job or not, so I don't want to. That's a spoiler alert right there.
So at this point, for college students, if they've got all these red flags, they should leave. But if they haven't left by now, there's more to come, right?
Yeah. So, and for this interview took another 2 hours. Okay, it was already 6 at night. And it took another 2 hours, which I just thought was very bizarre. And it was one of those interviews. It was kind of a gotcha interview. So let me kind of describe that. So the interviewer was trying to do some like brain teaser stuff and, ask me some of those questions like, how would you, how many ping pong balls can fit in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and how would you make the postal service profitable? And it was like, you hear about those kind of horror stories like those, for those ultra-competitive interviews like Goldman Sachs or,
or write a poem or
right.
A limerick or some of these exercises that I guess are supposed to demonstrate your creativity or your ability to think on your feet.
And I just thought it was actually an exercise in how you'd handle ridiculousness, or like how you would handle questions that didn't have an answer. So it was weird, man. And again, red flag. If that's not your bag, if that's not something that you would feel comfortable doing, like, look, your interviewer, I'm not saying that every interview is supposed to be like a treat, like a day at the spa, but it should be indicative of something like, about the work, about who you are, about who they are. And when you have this long interview of these like brain teasery weird questions, I just that is, especially from the CEO, that is an indicator of company culture. It is an indicator of the type of environment this person is dealing in. And quite frankly, I think that these brain teaser questions were because the person did not know how to have an effective interview. So that would put him because he had the upper hand, I know all these answers and it's my question. And so that put you at that put you like on in a defense, not defensive, but you were kind of vulnerable to his questions. So kind of to recap the interview experience, initial first impression, not great with the phone interview. The whole physical building, the whole physical kind of, arriving on site was weird. With no instructions, nobody there, people not welcoming you, not expecting you. Interviewers not prepared, interviewers asking you weird questions. If that's not enough red flags for you, and for me, maybe I deserved what I got.
Let's spend just a quick minute on what would be considered professional. And I'm sure we could do a whole separate episode on this. But, the interviewer picking up their phone at the right time, being prepared with questions. I know when I interview people at the beginning of the call, I'm very clear, here's our agenda. We're going to spend 30 minutes. Someone who's very upfront about what the process is for this interview and subsequent interviews. I think that should all be very transparent.
So the first thing would be the interviewer expressing interest in you and then offering you a chance to say, okay, when is a good time for me to call you? So accommodating you at the beginning and stating the amount of time that the initial phone call would take, and then stating generally what the content of the call. That would be the initial, and then doing what they say they're going to do, right?
Right.
Then it would be having a formal in-person interview invitation, written with the address, with where to park, with who to ask for with numbers in case you get lost or in case something happens to reschedule. So it's very, very clear about, what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be going, what to expect when you get there, and then welcoming you when you do arrive, and perhaps offering you a coffee or water. That would be nice too. Making sure you're comfortable, saying, hey, you need to use the restroom. Because I've also been to interviews. You drive an hour or whatever. You're nervous. Maybe you sat in a Starbucks. Maybe you were early. And you kind of would like to use the restroom. And throughout the interview, all I can think about is, I can't wait to go back to that Starbucks and get out of here. And so, just being hospitable and then allowing the candidate to wait in the lobby for a second to kind of gather their thoughts, not ushering them into a room, then doing the interview, like allowing them to kind of gather their thoughts, get everything together, and then, escorting them into the conference room, having them pick their seat instead of you picking their seat. That's also something that I thought works well with candidates. So you're not like, you sit the head of the table and we're all looking at you saying, hey, have a seat wherever you'd like, adjusting to them. And so making sure they're comfortable, because the more comfortable a candidate is, this is not just for them, the more free they're going to be with what they say to you, and the more honest that I think they're going to be with you. If they're on edge and they're in a position where, they're not comfortable, they're going to be very guarded in their answers. So you're not going to get the information that I think that would be valuable as a company.
Didn't you interview somewhere and they had a magic show going on right behind you, the open window?
This is okay. So this is kind of during the same. This is kind of during the same kind of process. I'd been laid off and I was going on a lot of different interviews. Okay. So it was another kind of startup, but it was a more mature company, and I interviewed on a Friday, and I interviewed with 5 people in 3 interviews back to back to back. It was a marathon. The last 2 people that I interviewed with were the instructors, and I was in a suit and they were in T-shirts. It was Friday, whatever. But again, you'd think that if you were interviewing somebody, you'd wear something, throw a coat, jacket on or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the interview that they had scheduled, that was the interview. It was from noon to 1, and that's when their students had a lunch break. Great. So I get to kind of see some of the students and how they interact with each other. And the position I was going for was the pathways director, which was kind of the career services arm of it. So after they're done with their coding boot camp, it'd be my job to make sure they have internships and or positions. So I'm like, great, get to see some of the students. Well, that day was a Friday, and on Friday they have like certain kind of like entertainment, like student showcase, which I thought was bizarre. And it was one of those like hip campuses where it's like the glass conference rooms, and my back was to the wall of where the showcase was going on. And at first I hear this loud music. It was like, that song, like the Final Countdown.
Sure.
I'm answering about
serious questions,
my qualifications as to how I can, my vision for the pathway program. And then in the background, the final countdown. And I'm like supposed to ignore what's happening. You could hear it clearly.
Right.
As clear as I just sang it into the microphone. So I'm like at a rock concert now, which you have to roll with it. What are you going to do? You're going to turn around. Oh, excuse me, please stop.
Right.
I'm interviewing. I'm important. No, you're not. You're just going to roll. And so I couldn't help but after the answer say, wow, this is a pretty lively bunch. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have a student showcase. And I'm like, oh, what's going on today? Like, it's like, oh, well, one of our students is an amateur magician. And so he's putting on a magic show. And right there in my head was, are you, insert expletive, kidding me? Are you effing kidding me? And I'm like, what are you going to do? So they asked me another question, and mid-answer, I shit you not, the instructor says, oh, is that fire? they were not listening
To anything
to
you were
anything
saying.
I was saying, and that's kind of how I knew I would not get the job.
There you
Scheduling
go.
my interview during the fucking magic show.
Wow. This has been great info. Lot of red flags that people should be on the lookout for. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to say that you're not done interviewing after your interview is over. There should be some follow up, and so of course I sent thank you, and I restating some of the things that were said, and just kind of leaving them with an idea of how I could add value to the company, and to which I got no response, and I did not hear from this company for 3 weeks. Again, so a good experience would be at least a response, or getting back to you within, I'd say, a week and a half. I'd say you don't want to leave your candidates out to dry, because if you have talented candidates, they're interviewing with more than just you, and
Right.
you need to stay competitive and on top of mind. And if that's a candidate that you want to attract to your company,
You want to keep them
now
engaged.
you are kind of pursuing them.
Definitely. Well, Jeff, thank you for sharing this insight. We're going to wrap up this episode and leave it at that. But in part 2, we are going to get into your actual agency experience and what to do when things just don't seem quite right. So tune in to our next episode. Don't forget to check us out on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also find us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you, as a listener, have ever experienced any agency horror stories, we would love to hear from you. We will include our email address in the show notes and give you a shout out on the show. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.